There's something people don't talk about enough. Most limits are imaginary. They're constructs, walls made of excuses, built by fear, held together by societal programming. You're told to aim for stability, to avoid failure, to choose the safer route. But comfort is a slow death. The truth is, greatness doesn't live in safety. It lives in the friction between what you are and what you could become. There's a champion already inside you, coded into your DNA. It's not waiting for motivation, it's waiting for activation, and that begins when you decide with extreme clarity that mediocrity is not acceptable. Champions aren't born with better resources. They just develop an unshakable bias toward action. While others think, they build. While others analyze, they execute. Champions have an internal operating system that doesn't run on praise, approval, or external validation. It runs on vision, real vision. Vision so big, it borders on delusion, but every radical achievement in history looked like a delusion until it worked. So how do you unleash that champion? It's not as complex as you think. Start by embracing problems. Big ones, the kind that people run from, the kind that make your brain hurt. The champion inside you thrives in high-stakes environments. It feeds on the unknown. It needs resistance. It needs failure. Because every time you fall and get up, you are literally reprogramming your mind for resilience. Failure isn't a bug in the system. It's the upgrade. Most people want to win, but they want to feel good while doing it. That's not how this works. You need to get obsessed with discomfort. Champions voluntarily step into environments that force them to adapt. They seek out the hard problems, the impossible tasks, the chaos, because that's where transformation happens. You have to treat difficulty like fuel. Your potential is not capped by intelligence, money, or background. It's capped by your tolerance for ambiguity and pain. Champions don't avoid complexity, they systematize it. They don't just work hard, they work strategically. They don't burn out because they know what they're chasing is bigger than exhaustion. They don't have time for distractions because they are building the future. You want to unleash the power within you, then reframe how you see time. Most people treat time like it's unlimited, yet they act like it's worthless. Champions compress decades into years, and years into months, because they act with urgency. They're not waiting for the perfect moment. They're executing when they're underqualified, underfunded, and underestimated, because they know momentum beats perfection. Champions aren't interested in being understood. They're interested in building what doesn't exist yet. If you want to be liked by everyone, you'll never build anything legendary. At some point, you must decide, are you optimizing for applause, or are you optimizing for impact? Champions always choose impact, even if it means being misunderstood, criticized, or doubted for years. There will be times when you feel completely alone on your path. That's normal. The road to excellence isn't crowded because very few people are willing to endure long-term uncertainty without short-term payoff. But if you hold the line, if you commit, adapt, and endure, you will separate yourself. Not by luck, not by inheritance, but by sheer force of will. The champion in you isn't accessed by dreaming. It's accessed by building, by doing the work over and over again, when it's boring, when it's frustrating, when no one is watching, especially then. Discipline isn't a prison, it's a path to freedom. It's how you take the raw energy inside and refine it into results that bend reality. You don't need permission to start. You don't need the perfect conditions. You only need one thing, a decision, a real one, the kind that permanently alters how you operate. Once you make that decision, once you commit to becoming unrecognizable to your former self, there's no limit to what you can do. The champion inside you doesn't need a spotlight, it needs a mission, and once you align with that mission, the world will catch up eventually. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. Seek discomfort to evolve. It begins with understanding that the human brain is wired for safety, not significance. It seeks familiarity because the known feels secure, predictable, survivable. That wiring may have helped our ancestors avoid predators, but in the modern age, it's the root of stagnation. Most people don't fail because of a lack of talent. They fail because they prioritize comfort over growth. The couch becomes a prison, the routine becomes a ceiling, and the pursuit of convenience becomes the silent killer of ambition. Discomfort, on the other hand, is the raw material of transformation. It's the pressure that forges strength, the friction that triggers evolution. If you want to rise, you have to first confront the parts of your life where you've settled. Identify where you've chosen ease over excellence, routine over risk, security over progress. Every area where you feel too comfortable is an area where you've stopped growing. The path to greatness requires you to do the things you resist. That resistance is the compass. If something terrifies you, exhausts you, challenges your worldview, that's where you should be heading. The discomfort isn't a signal to retreat, it's data. It tells you exactly where the breakthrough lies. Champions don't fear discomfort, they calibrate themselves to it. They get addicted to the burn of the process. They train themselves to operate under tension, to remain composed in chaos. When the average person shuts down, the high performer locks in. When others complain, they problem solve. They don't wait for motivation. They move despite the lack of it. That's the real difference. It's not genetic. It's not access. It's the willingness to feel discomfort consistently and keep going. The world has sold people the lie that happiness is found in ease. But growth doesn't happen in ease. Growth happens when your brain is stretched, when your body is pushed, when your limits are tested and shattered. Think about it like resistance training. The muscle only grows when you stress it past its current capability. No strain, no strength. The same principle applies to mindset, discipline, focus, and purpose. Every breakthrough you want in your life, physical, mental, professional, sits on the other side of discomfort. If you keep backing away every time it gets hard, yourself, selecting for mediocrity, you're training yourself to stop short of your capacity. And the scary part is, the more you choose comfort, the harder it becomes to choose anything else. It becomes your default. You lose your edge. You forget what you're capable of. There's no greatness without voluntary suffering. That doesn't mean chaos for the sake of chaos. It means controlled hardship. It means putting yourself in situations that test you deliberately, purposefully, strategically. It means setting goals that demand new levels of you. It means waking up earlier than you want, studying longer than feels good, training harder than what's convenient, facing fears that make your stomach drop, initiating conversations you'd rather avoid, taking risks that come with the real possibility of failure. These are not the actions of masochism. They are the rituals of champions. They aren't just trying to win. They are becoming someone who is capable of winning, and that process is uncomfortable by design. Most people live the same year over and over because they've built their lives around minimizing discomfort. They take the easy job, the predictable relationship, the safe routine, and then they wonder why they feel stuck, why their energy fades, why their dreams seem out of reach. They are avoiding the very stressors that would make them stronger. Growth isn't something you stumble into. It's something you engineer, and the tool you use to engineer it is discomfort. It's not a glitch. It's a feature. Discomfort reveals truth. It strips away your ego. It shows you your real limits, not the ones you imagined. It exposes the difference between who you think you are and who you actually are. And it gives you the power to close that gap, but only if you're willing to stand in the fire instead of running from it. The people who create massive impact in the world aren't the ones who avoid stress. They're the ones who develop endurance under stress. They take on pressure, They embrace risk. They expose themselves to failure repeatedly because they understand that failure is information, not identity. They don't see discomfort as something to be managed. They see it as a forge. Every time they walk into the storm, they come out sharper, more focused, more resilient. They are building a nervous system that can handle the volatility of high performance, and over time, that makes them unstoppable. Not because they never feel fear, but because they've trained themselves to move through it. If you want to rise above average, your tolerance for discomfort must be greater than your desire for ease. You must learn to hunt the hard things, to crave the challenge, to see the pain as proof that you're alive, evolving, progressing. There will be moments where you want to quit. That's normal. That's expected. But the champion in you understands that quitting isn't an option. Champions suffer strategically. They don't suffer passively or pointlessly. They suffer with purpose. They pick their pain, and they do it with intention. Because they know the person on the other side of that discomfort is stronger, wiser, and more dangerous than the version who played it safe. This is not about hype. It's not about motivation that fades after a few hours. This is about internal architecture, about rewiring how you operate at your core. It's about building a new relationship with discomfort so that when it shows up, and it will, you don't run from it, you welcome it. You work with it, you extract every lesson from it, and you use it to sharpen your edge. Every high performer you admire, every leader who has changed the world, every individual who has done something that mattered, none of them were trying to feel comfortable. They were trying to become capable. They were trying to build. They were trying to solve hard problems. They were trying to stretch the boundary of what's possible, and that pursuit is anything but comfortable. But it's worth it, it's necessary, it's the path. Champions act with urgency, not perfection. The myth of perfection is one of the most destructive illusions in the world of progress. It keeps people planning instead of executing, hesitating instead of building, doubting instead of doing. The obsession with flawless execution kills momentum before it's ever created. Champions understand that progress is messy, innovation is chaotic, mastery is iterative. They don't wait until they feel ready because they know readiness is a moving target. The idea that you'll someday have perfect clarity, perfect conditions, perfect timing, it's a trap. The world doesn't reward perfectionism, it rewards results. The people who change industries, disrupt systems, and leave impact don't get there by polishing theories. They move, they test, they adapt, they launch version 1 and fix it live. They operate with a bias for action because speed is leverage in a rapidly changing world. Perfection is a liability. The faster you move, the more valuable you become. The person who hesitates, who waits for more data, who demands more certainty, gets left behind. Champions don't aim for flawless. They aim for fast, functional, and evolving. They treat life like a prototype, constantly deploying, receiving feedback, and upgrading. This is not recklessness, it's strategic urgency. They understand that momentum compounds. Once you're in motion, every step you take opens doors you couldn't see from the starting line. But you only get access to those opportunities by acting. Not thinking, not hoping, not researching indefinitely, acting, doing. Shipping the fear of imperfection is really the fear of judgment. People want to look good, sound smart, appear competent, but champions have moved beyond the need for surface-level validation. They are driven by the mission, not the optics. If something matters enough, it's worth doing badly the first time. It's worth facing embarrassment, criticism, misunderstanding. Because the alternative is inaction, and inaction guarantees stagnation. Champions are willing to look foolish temporarily if it means growing exponentially later. They'd rather launch and adjust than delay and decay. They don't overanalyze because they've learned that analysis is infinite. You can always find another reason not to act, but every second you spend hesitating is a second you could have been improving. Execution trumps everything. Even a mediocre idea executed with urgency will outperform a genius idea that never gets off the ground. Champions know that the real learning happens in motion. There are things you will never understand about a challenge until you're deep inside it. You don't build confidence through planning. You build it through friction. Through trial, error, feedback, recalibration. Champions have internalized this. They measure progress by action taken, not perfection achieved. They know that each rep builds capacity. Each launch builds data. Each conversation builds clarity. Waiting doesn't. What separates elite performers from the rest isn't that they always have the best ideas or resources. It's that they act like their life depends on it. Because in many ways it does. Time is a non-renewable asset. Champions live with urgency because they understand the cost of delay. Every hour spent procrastinating is opportunity burned, not theoretical opportunity. Real deals, real connections, real learning, gone. The people who rise aren't necessarily the ones who were most talented. They're the ones who moved when others froze. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't wait for motivation. They acted relentlessly, repeatedly, no matter how they felt. Champions also know that the longer you delay, the heavier the task becomes. Small tasks, when avoided, compound into pressure. Unfinished goals turn into mental clutter. Delay creates anxiety, and anxiety kills execution. That's why urgency is not just a productivity strategy, it's a mental health strategy. Doing the thing reduces the weight of the thing. Champions execute quickly not just to win, but to stay clear, focused, and unburdened. They want to move fast, not just to be first, but to stay mentally agile. They understand that action is the antidote to overthinking. And once you build that momentum, you become a different version of yourself. Someone who trusts their instincts, acts with decisiveness, and learns at a speed others can't match. This mindset doesn't come naturally. It has to be trained. Most people have been conditioned by school systems, corporate structures, and cultural expectations to prioritize correctness over speed. You're rewarded for the right answer, not the fast experiment. You're punished for mistakes, even though mistakes are the gateway to mastery. Champions actively rewire that conditioning. They start treating action as the teacher. They stop asking, "Is this perfect?" and start asking, "Is this launchable?" They don't obsess over being right. They obsess over getting better. They understand that every delay fueled by perfectionism is actually just fear wearing a disguise. There's also a level of ruthlessness required. Champions cut non-essentials without apology. They don't get distracted by tasks that look productive but produce nothing. They don't fill their schedule with motion instead of progress. They're constantly pruning, focusing, sharpening. They are brutal with their calendar, intentional with their energy, and obsessed with momentum. Urgency is not about rushing. It's about refusing to waste. It's the awareness that every moment is either invested or lost. And champions refuse to waste. They are deeply aware of the cost of inaction. Not just in terms of time lost, but in opportunities missed, relationships delayed, ideas unexpressed, and impact diminished. You'll never meet a high performer who brags about how long they waited. You'll never hear a world changer say, "I waited until it was perfect." What you will hear is stories of rapid decisions, uncomfortable launches, risky starts, and messy first drafts. You'll hear about moments where they were terrified, but they moved anyway. Where they had doubts, but they acted anyway. Where they didn't know the outcome, but they trusted the process. Champions build momentum through courage, not certainty. They leap, then build the wings on the way down. And in doing so, they create a velocity others can't replicate. The marketplace doesn't reward ideas. It rewards execution. The people you admire didn't get there by waiting, they got there by moving, by acting as if time was their most precious asset, because it is. They understood that the difference between average and elite is not the size of the dream, but the speed of the decision, the ability to act without delay, to adjust without ego, to ship without shame. It's not about being fearless, it's about being faster than your fear, about using urgency as a weapon, about trusting that speed, combined with consistency, will outperform polish and hesitation every single time. Acting with urgency rewires your self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits. You stop identifying as someone who hesitates. You become a person who moves, who builds, who learns by doing. That shift changes how you approach everything. You ask better questions. You tolerate ambiguity. You develop thicker skin. You become immune to overthinking, because your reflex isn't "let me wait until it's perfect." It's "let me get it live and learn in real time." Champions thrive on that edge. They live in that friction. They know that the price of impact is action under pressure, and they pay that price daily without flinching because they've learned the truth. Urgency is freedom. Urgency is progress. Urgency is how you outpace the doubt, disrupt the patterns, and unleash the speed required to lead in a world that never stops moving. Discipline is the gateway to freedom and transformation. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's restriction, a limitation, a chain, but the reality is the opposite. Discipline is the structure that sets you free. It's the foundation that makes creativity possible, the system that gives birth to clarity, the engine that powers consistency. Without discipline, potential dies in theory. Goals remain talk. Ideas stay in notebooks. Ambition becomes a performance instead of a product. The world doesn't care what you intend to do, it reacts to what you execute. Discipline is the bridge between the vision in your mind and the results in your life. The truth is, motivation is unreliable. It's inconsistent, emotion-based, and reactive. One moment it's high, the next it's gone. If you build your habits around motivation, your progress will always be fragile. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel, it only asks what you've committed to. Discipline shows up when your energy doesn't. It kicks in when excitement fades. It's not sexy, it's not flashy, but it is effective. Day after day, rep after rep, even when it's boring. Especially when it's boring, that's when the real growth happens. Champions are not defined by how hard they work when they're hyped. They're defined by how precise they are when they're tired, unmotivated, and no one's watching. Discipline is the ability to make decisions based on future results, not current emotions. It's the internal command to say no to what's easy now so you can say yes to what matters later. Most people live by impulse. Champions live by standards. Discipline sets those standards. It draws a line in the sand and says, "This is who I am now," not when it's convenient, not when people are watching all the time. That consistency over time creates a version of you that becomes trustworthy, not to others, to yourself. Self-trust is the real superpower. It's what allows you to move with speed, act without hesitation, recover faster, and execute under pressure. You can't buy self-trust, you earn it. Through disciplined action repeated until it becomes your identity. Every meaningful transformation in your life will be built on the back of discipline. Whether it's your body, your career, your mindset, your business, discipline is the foundation. It's what ensures you show up even when there's no external validation. It's what makes sure the mission doesn't stop just because the mood does. The world is chaotic. Emotions are volatile. Life is unpredictable. Discipline is the stabilizer. It's the code that keeps you functional and focused even in turbulence. Champions don't rely on talent alone. They rely on systems. And the most powerful system they install is disciplined behavior tied to non-negotiable goals. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If your system is built on random effort, you'll get random results. But if your system is built on structured effort, on disciplined, trackable, repeatable execution, you can scale anything. Discipline doesn't guarantee that you'll never fail, it guarantees that you'll always recover. That's what makes it powerful. It turns failure into feedback, chaos into structure, dreams into execution plans. Discipline makes you durable. It makes you dangerous. Because when you can't be thrown off by mood swings or external distractions, your consistency becomes your competitive advantage. Most people treat discipline like a punishment. Champions treat it like a privilege. They know that the ability to delay gratification, to focus, to execute boring tasks with precision, is what separates the elite from everyone else. Discipline is not about suppressing joy, it's about deferring pleasure for purpose. It's about training your system to choose progress over impulse. It's not that high performers don't have distractions or temptations. It's that they've trained themselves to not negotiate with them. Discipline gives them clarity in a world full of noise. And that clarity becomes their operating advantage. It starts small, with how you wake up, with how you train, with how you talk to yourself when no one hears, with how you handle your time, your food, your inputs, your boundaries. Discipline is not one big decision. It's thousands of small ones stacked. And every time you choose the disciplined path, you reinforce a neural pathway. You train your identity. Over time, that identity becomes default. You no longer need to fight to be consistent. You become the type of person who simply is. Discipline makes that transformation possible. It rewires the circuitry of your character. It shifts your identity from reactive to deliberate. Discipline removes the need for motivation. When the standard is installed deep enough, you don't need inspiration to execute. You need a clock. You don't wait for the mood to strike. You show up because the structure demands it. That's how goals are achieved at scale. That's how businesses are built. That's how athletes win. That's how creators dominate. Through a schedule that doesn't care how you feel. Through rituals that get done whether you're excited or exhausted. Champions are not the most excited. They're the most consistent. And that consistency is a direct result of discipline, practiced and enforced over time. There's a brutal truth here. Everyone wants freedom, but very few are willing to do what freedom requires. Real freedom isn't found in escaping effort. It's found in mastering effort. It's found in earning the power to direct your time, your body, your mind, and your outcomes. That power isn't given. It's earned through discipline. Through saying no to 99 things so you can say yes to the one thing that matters. Discipline forces you to choose, and in a world addicted to distraction and dopamine, that ability to choose long, term over short, term is becoming more rare and more valuable. The disciplined become irreplaceable, not because they're more talented, but because they can be counted on when it counts. Champions love discipline because it keeps them grounded in reality. There's no guessing. There's no emotional debate. There's only execution. They've internalized the idea that how you do anything is how you do everything. If you cut corners on your habits, you'll cut corners on your goals. If you procrastinate on small tasks, you'll delay big opportunities. Discipline trains attention to detail. It trains follow through. It trains intensity. And once those traits become standard, the results become predictable. People start wondering how you keep winning, but the answer is boring. You did what needed to be done, even when you didn't feel like it. Especially when you didn't feel like it. This isn't about being robotic. It's about being relentless. Discipline gives you emotional range, not limitation. It teaches you to act without needing emotional permission. You can be tired and still train. You can be frustrated and still lead. You can be uninspired and still create, because discipline doesn't silence emotion, it elevates it. It allows you to perform despite the chaos inside, and that capacity makes you a weapon in high-pressure environments. When others hesitate, you move. When others collapse, you execute. When others drown in indecision, you deliver. That edge is not magic. It's not gifted. It's trained. It's earned. It's built one disciplined choice at a time. People want the rewards of discipline without the process. But the process is the reward, because who you become through that process is worth more than anything you achieve. You become focused, grounded, resilient, clear. You become unstoppable, not because everything goes your way, but because nothing can make you quit. You stop flinching at adversity. You stop doubting yourself every other week. You operate with certainty, not because you have guarantees, but because you have discipline. And discipline, once mastered, becomes the ultimate form of self-respect, the highest version of self-leadership, and the true key to personal freedom and transformation. Impact matters more than applause. Build, even if misunderstood. In a world addicted to validation, applause has become currency. Social media, metrics, public opinion, peer approval, all of them feed a system where perception often outweighs substance. The problem with that is simple. The pursuit of applause is fleeting, shallow, and externally controlled. It makes your self-worth dependent on the reaction of people who don't know your mission, don't share your vision, and don't live with the consequences of your decisions. The champion mindset doesn't chase applause. It chases impact, real, measurable, irreversible change. It prioritizes building over impressing, contribution over recognition, depth over appearance. There will always be a crowd waiting to give feedback. They'll cheer when it benefits them and go silent when it doesn't. They'll praise you for staying in line and criticize you for stepping into originality. If your actions are dictated by applause, you'll end up living a life built for spectators, not one engineered for purpose. The greatest builders, creators, thinkers, and disruptors were misunderstood, sometimes ridiculed, often ignored, and rarely celebrated in real time. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't water down their vision to make it palatable. They built what mattered, whether or not anyone clapped for it. That's where impact is born, in the silence, in the resistance, in the moments when you're creating not because people want it, but because it needs to exist. Impact is legacy. It's what remains after the noise fades. Applause can be manipulated, impact can't. You can buy followers, fake engagement, posture status, but you can't fake results. You can't fake the lives changed, the systems upgraded, the products that solve real problems, the messages that alter perspectives. Champions know that. That's why they stay focused on the mission, not the optics. While others perform, they build. While others obsess over likes, they engineer leverage. While others market fluff, they deliver force. That's the separation. Applause chases the moment. Impact compounds over time. Applause feeds the ego. Impact builds empires. Applause fades. Impact echoes. The pursuit of impact requires you to embrace being misunderstood. Not everyone will get it. Not everyone should. Vision, by its nature, is something others can't see until you manifest it. It lives in your imagination first, which means it will always look like arrogance or delusion or miscalculation until the results speak. But if you break every time someone questions you, you're not built for this. If you need agreement to move, your trajectory will always be limited. Champions learn to thrive in the gap between vision and validation. They keep building when the room is quiet. They keep shipping when no one praises the product. They keep solving the problem even when the market doesn't recognize the value yet. That's the difference between a creator and a performer. One builds because they must. The other performs because they crave approval. You have to decide who you're optimizing for. If your standard is public applause, You will forever filter your work through the lens of popularity. You will censor, you will compromise, you will dilute. But if your standard is maximum impact, you'll build what's necessary, even if it's not trendy, even if it's not celebrated, even if it's misunderstood, because your compass isn't applause, it's mission, it's outcome, it's truth. The people who shift industries, launch revolutions, change the trajectory of others' lives. They don't seek to be liked, they seek to be effective, and that means being willing to stand alone if needed, to speak when it's unpopular, to act when it's inconvenient, to move with intensity even when there's no stage, no crowd, no clapping. The obsession with applause has made people fragile. One harsh comment derails them. One rejection makes them quit. One period of low recognition leads them to question the entire mission. Champions are anti-fragile. They use resistance as feedback. Criticism doesn't paralyze them. It refines them. Being misunderstood doesn't discourage them. It motivates them. They don't need to be seen in the moment because they're focused on building something that will be undeniable in time. They don't panic when the crowd walks away because their why is bigger than the need to be liked. Their self-worth isn't outsourced. Their validation isn't public. It's internal, driven by alignment with purpose, not popularity. This mindset unlocks creative freedom. When you no longer fear being misunderstood, you become more bold, more innovative, more dangerous. You stop mimicking. You stop copying trends. You stop trying to please everyone. And in that freedom, your work sharpens. Your vision clarifies. Your execution intensifies. You create things that last because they were built from conviction, not convenience. Most people don't create at their true potential because they're building with one eye on the critics. Champions don't build with an audience in mind. They build with impact in mind. They know the audience will arrive eventually, but their work has to exist first. Impact is slow. It's unglamorous. It doesn't always go viral. It's forged in repetition, pressure, and iteration. It requires patience. It requires resilience. It requires the humility to work when no one sees and the confidence to know that what you're building will matter. Champions don't confuse applause with proof. They don't interpret silence as failure. They measure progress by metrics that matter. Lives changed, skills developed, systems improved, problems solved, momentum gained. They track real data, not external noise. That data becomes their fuel. Not opinion, not commentary, not applause, evidence, progress, traction, movement. Sometimes impact looks like showing up when it's hard. Sometimes it looks like executing when your name isn't mentioned. Sometimes it looks like delivering value in a meeting, a product, a decision that no one will ever recognize you for. Champions don't care. They're not chasing credit. They're chasing excellence. They're chasing outcomes. They're obsessed with the result, not the recognition. That obsession gives them an edge, because when everyone else is distracted by visibility, they're buried in execution. They're putting in the reps, testing the systems, iterating the process, sharpening the vision. There's a quiet confidence that comes with impact, driven focus. It's not arrogant, it's anchored. It's not loud, it's lethal. Because when you know what you're building is real, you don't need noise to validate it. You don't need applause to justify it. You're not waiting to be seen. You're committed to being effective. That commitment compounds. It attracts the right allies. It builds a reputation based on substance. It earns trust. It creates momentum that can't be faked. And over time, it makes your work not only respected, but impossible to ignore. Your mission is not to be celebrated. Your mission is to build what solves problems, build what shifts systems, build what helps people, build what outlasts applause. Applause is a byproduct, never the aim. When you understand that, you become dangerous. Because you're no longer limited by approval. You're no longer addicted to attention. You become capable of doing the deep, hard, focused work that creates real, lasting change. And in a world full of noise, distraction, and performance, That kind of focus is a superpower. Not everyone will get it. Not everyone needs to. You're not building for everyone. You're building for impact. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be legendary. And legends are rarely understood while they're building. They are misunderstood, dismissed, criticized, until the results become too powerful to ignore, until the work speaks louder than any applause ever could, until the impact becomes so undeniable that even the critics go quiet. That's the power of building without needing to be seen. That's the power of focusing on what matters. That's the power of choosing impact over applause every single time.